Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became the Stormbringer. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. There is no silence in the soul of a hungry man. The cold was the first thing Izuku Midoriya woke up to every morning. It wasn't a matter of ambient temperature. Mizurufu was currently enjoying a humid, sweltering mid-July, but a deep, marrow-settling chill that lived inside his bones. It was a hollowness, a vacuum in the center of his chest that sucked the warmth out of his blood and left him shivering under 3 blankets, while the cicadas outside screamed of summer heat. He sat up, the movement accompanied by the familiar rush of dizziness. His vision swam, graying at the edges, spots of light dancing before his eyes like dying fireflies. He waited for the vertigo to pass, his hand clutching the fabric of his shirt over his heart. Thump. 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 His heart beat slowly. Too slowly. Dr. Tsubasa had called it chronic idiopathic bradycardia compounded by severe anemia. A constitution so frail it was a miracle he could walk to school, let alone dream of heroism. Izuku? Are you up? His mother's voice floated through the door, laced with that perpetual, trembling worry that had defined their relationship since his 4th birthday. I'm up, Mom, Izuku rasped. He cleared his throat, trying to inject some false vitality into his tone. I'm okay. He wasn't okay. He hadn't been okay for 10 years. Izuku swung his legs out of bed, his feet hitting the floorboards. He caught a glimpse of himself in the full-length mirror attached to his closet door. He looked like a specter haunting his own life. His skin was the color of old parchment, paled to the point of translucence, with dark, bruised circles permanently etched beneath his emerald eyes. His hair, an unruly mop of green and black, looked dull, lacking the sheen of health. He was thin, dangerously so, his ribs pressing against his skin like the bars of a birdcage. He dressed in his Aldera Junior High uniform, the black gakurin hanging loosely on his frame. As he buttoned the collar, he felt it again, the hum. It wasn't a sound he heard with his ears. It was a vibration in his teeth, a static charge at the base of his skull. It was a sensation of waiting. It had been there since he was a child, growing louder with every passing year, a silent companion to his misery. It whispered of a hunger that food could not satiate. He grabbed his yellow backpack and his hero analysis for the future number 13 notebook. He looked at the cover, his fingers tracing the scorched edges where Katsuki had blown it up yesterday, only for Izuku to painstakingly tape it back together. Hero, he whispered to the reflection. The words sounded like a joke. A cruel, impossible joke. The walk to school was a gauntlet. Every step required a conscious expenditure of energy. The gravity of the earth seemed to pull at him harder than it did anyone else. By the time he reached the classroom, he was breathless, a sheen of cold sweat clinging to his forehead. He slid into his seat, trying to make himself as small as possible. He didn't want to be noticed. Being noticed meant attention, and attention in Aldera Junior High usually meant pain. But Fate, and Katsuki Bakugo, rarely cared for what Izuku wanted. Oh, Deku. The voice was low, guttural, and smelled of nitroglycerin. Izuku stiffened, keeping his eyes on his notebook. Good morning, Kaken, Izuku murmured. An explosion popped against his desk, scorching the wood inches from his hand. Izuku flinched, the scent of smoke filling his lungs. He looked up to see Katsuki looming over him, flanked by his 2 lackeys. Katsuki's red eyes were narrowed, searching for something. For years, Katsuki had bullied him for being quirkless. But lately, the bullying had changed. Katsuki didn't just look at him with contempt anymore. He looked at him with a strange, instinctive unease, like a dog that growls at an empty corner of a room. You look like a corpse today, Deku, Katsuki sneered, though he didn't step closer. Why do you even bother coming? You're gonna collapse and die one of these days. And it's gonna be a pain in my ass to step over you. I'm fine, Kaken, Izuku lied, the script worn smooth by repetition. Don't lie to me, Katsuki shouted, another explosion popping in his palm. You think you can keep pretending? You're applying to UA, aren't you? A sick, quirkless reject like you? The class went silent. The teacher, who had just entered, pretended not to see. I have to try, Izuku said, his voice trembling but stubborn. Katsuki stared at him. For a second, the anger in his eyes flickered, replaced by that strange unease again. He looked at Izuku's chest, right where the hum was vibrating. Katsuki scowled, stepping back. Whatever, Katsuki spat, turning away. Just don't die in the hallways. It's unsanitary. The morning passed in a blur of lectures Izuku barely heard. The hum was loud today. It drowned out the math teacher, drowned out the gossip. It felt like something was scratching at the inside of his sternum. He felt thirst, but water didn't help. He felt hunger, but the bento his mother had packed made him nauseous. Empty, the voice inside him seemed to say. So empty. Withering. When the final bell rang, Izuku was the first one out the door, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the classroom. He took the long way home, avoiding the main streets, seeking the quiet of the underpass. He needed to be alone. He needed to understand why he felt like he was fading away. The tunnel was cool and damp. Izuku walked through the shadows, his footsteps echoing against the concrete. He clutched the strap of his backpack, his mind wandering to the latest hero debut he'd seen on the news that morning. Kamui Woods. Mount Lady. They were so full of life, so vibrant. Why am I so empty? The manhole cover behind him rattled. Izuku stopped. He turned, just as a mass of dark, viscous sludge exploded from the sewer. It rose up, forming a monstrous, liquid shape with manic, bulging eyes and a gaping maw of fluid teeth. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice wet and gurgling. Izuku froze. His fight-or-flight response triggered, but his body betrayed him. His legs felt like lead. He couldn't run. The villain lunged. The sludge hit him like a tidal wave. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose, filling his throat with the taste of sewage and rot. Izuku clawed at the liquid, his fingers sinking uselessly into the muck. Don't struggle, kid, the villain whispered in his ear. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need your body to hide. Thanks for the help. I'm dying, Izuku thought. The edges of his vision turned black. His lungs burned. This is it. I'm going to die here, alone, in a tunnel. But as the oxygen faded, something else woke up. The hum turned into a roar. As the villain's body engulfed him, Izuku didn't just feel the suffocation. He felt the villain's life. He felt the electrical impulses in the sludge's nervous system. He felt the stamina, the kinetic energy holding the liquid form together. It was a bright, burning sun compared to Izuku's cold void. Take it, a voice whispered from the darkness of his own soul. Take it and live. Izuku's fingers, buried in the sludge, twitched. For a fraction of a second, the sludge villain screamed. It wasn't a sound of anger, but of sudden, searing pain. The liquid recoiled, bubbling as if it had touched a hot iron. What are you? The villain shrieked. Have no fear. The booming voice shattered the moment. The manhole cover flew into the air, ricocheting off the tunnel ceiling. A massive figure stood silhouetted in the light, muscles rippling, a smile plastered across his face. For I am here, All Might. With a single wind pressure smash, the hero obliterated the villain's hold. The sludge scattered, splattering against the walls. Izuku was thrown back, hitting the concrete hard. He gasped, sucking in air, coughing up slime. He looked up, vision blurring, to see the towering figure of the symbol of peace collecting the scattered villain into soda bottles. All Might. Izuku wheezed. He tried to stand, but the exertion was too much. The brief contact with the villain's energy, that split second where he had instinctively tried to drain him, had left him dizzy with a strange, intoxicating rush, followed immediately by a crash. You are safe now, young man. All Might laughed, giving a thumbs up. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. Izuku scrambled for his notebook. Autograph, please. Already done. All Might pointed to the book. Izuku looked. The signature was there. Tears pricked his eyes. This was his chance. The question that had haunted him for a decade burned in his throat. All Might, wait. Izuku grabbed the hero's pant leg as All Might prepared to jump. I have no time, Fan. Evil awaits. Can a person? Izuku's voice cracked. He held on tight, even as they launched into the air. The rooftop scene played out like a tragedy. Izuku stood on the edge of the building, the wind whipping his oversized uniform. Across from him, the symbol of peace had deflated, revealing the skeletal, wounded man beneath. The truth of the injury was horrific, but the truth of his words was worse. Pro-heroes are constantly risking their lives, All Might said, his voice grave, lacking the bombastic energy of his persona. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. He saw the sunken eyes, the trembling hands, the sickly pallor. Some villains just can't be fought without powers. Can you be a hero without a quirk? All Might sighed, and the sound was like a coffin closing. No. I cannot honestly say that you can. The world stopped. The hum in Izuku's chest stopped. For a moment, there was absolute silence. If you want to help people, All Might continued, opening the door to the stairwell, you could become a police officer. They get a lot of flack because the heroes capture the villains, but it's a fine profession. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. The sun was high in the sky, beating down on the city, but Izuku had never felt colder. No, the word echoed in his mind. He walked to the railing. He looked down at the city. Cars moved like toys. People were specks. Jump, a dark part of his mind whispered. It's over. You're broken. You're a vessel with nothing inside. But as he gripped the railing, the metal groaned. He looked down at his hands. Black sparks, like erratic lightning, were dancing between his fingers. The metal of the railing was rapidly rusting, aging decades and seconds under his grip. He pulled his hands away, terrified. The sparks vanished. The railing was pitted and corroded where he had touched it. What? Izuku whispered. An explosion rocked the city. A massive plume of smoke rose from the shopping district a few blocks away. It was close. Instinct took over before despair could finish the job. Izuku ran. He didn't know why. He just ran toward the fire. The Tatooine shopping district was a vision of hell. Flames roared, licking the sides of buildings. Glass shattered. The crowd was screaming, pressed back by the police. Heroes were there, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, but they were doing nothing. They stood frozen, helpless against the inferno. Izuku pushed his way to the front of the crowd. The heat was intense, drying his eyes, scorching his skin. Why aren't they doing anything? A bystander yelled. The villain grabbed a kid. It's a hostage situation. Izuku looked into the center of the alley. The fires parted for a moment, revealing the monster. It was the sludge villain. He had escaped. And trapped within his suffocating embrace was a student, ash-blonde hair. Explosions popping frantically. Red eyes wide with terror. Katsuki? The heroes were making excuses. I don't have the right quirk. The alley is too narrow. I can't get close to the fire. Izuku watched as the sludge forced its way into Katsuki's mouth. He saw the light in Katsuki's eyes dimming. He saw the despair. And then, he heard it. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a scream. Feed. The voice erupted from the center of Izuku's being. It wasn't his voice. It was ancient. It was hungry. It was a command that bypassed his brain and hot-wired his muscles. The hum became a thunderclap. Izuku's legs moved on their own. He ducked under the police tape. Hey! Stop! You'll get killed! Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. He sprinted into the inferno. The heat should have been unbearable, but Izuku felt nothing. No, that wasn't right. He felt the heat washing over him, and he felt his body drinking it. The lethargy that had plagued him all day vanished. The closer he got to the fire, the faster he ran. He reached the villain. The sludge monster turned, its liquid eyes widening in recognition. You again? The villain roared, lashing out with a tendril of sludge. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't think. He just acted. He swung his right arm. He wasn't holding anything, but his hand grasped the air as if gripping a hilt. Let him go! Izuku screamed, and reality shattered. From the center of his chest, a singularity opened. Shadow, pure ink-black shadow, erupted from his heart. It poured down his arm, coalescing, hardening, sharpening. In the span of a heartbeat, the shadow formed a weapon. It was a sword. A massive, two-handed greatsword composed of solid darkness. It was nearly 6 feet long, etched with runes that glowed with a sickly violet light. The blade pulsed like a living organ. Izuku swung. He didn't just cut the air. He cut the distance. He cut the heat. The black blade sliced through the sludge tendril. There was no resistance. But unlike a normal blade, it didn't just sever the limb. The moment the black edge touched the sludge, the villain screamed. It was a sound that clawed at the sanity of everyone watching. The sludge turned gray, calcifying instantly. The energy that animated the liquid, the quirk factor, the stamina, the life force, was violently ripped out and funneled into the sword. The blade hummed, a beautiful, terrifying sound, like a choir of ghosts. Energy flooded Izuku. It was euphoric. The chronic pain vanished. The cold vanished. His muscles swelled with stolen power. His eyes, usually a soft green, flared with a bioluminescent, predatory emerald light. The whites of his eyes turned pitch black. Kaken! Izuku leaped. He moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of black lightning. He landed directly in front of the main body of the villain. The sludge villain looked at Izuku, and for the first time in his criminal career, he felt true, primal fear. He wasn't looking at a boy. He was looking at the top of the food chain. Get back! The villain shrieked, trying to detonate an explosion using Katsuki's quirk. No. The voice that came out of Izuku's mouth was double-layered, his own boyish tenor overlaid with a rasping, ancient baritone. Izuku thrust the black blade forward. The tip of the sword pierced the center of the sludge mass, missing Katsuki by millimeters. Drink. The effect was apocalyptic. A vortex of wind spiraled around the alley. The fire was sucked toward the blade, the flames turning from orange to blue to black before vanishing into the steel. The sludge villain convulsed. His liquid body began to evaporate, not into steam, but into nothingness. His mass shrank rapidly, his consciousness shredded by the blade's voracious appetite. Katsuki was released, falling to the pavement, coughing and gasping. But Izuku couldn't stop. The sword was stuck in the villain. It was feasting. And through the sword, Izuku was feasting. He felt the villain's memories, his fears, his very life essence pumping into his veins. It was the greatest feeling he had ever known. It was addictive. It was horrifying. More. Take it all. Leave nothing but dust. Deku. Katsuki whispered, looking up. Katsuki's eyes were wide with horror. He saw Izuku standing there, holding a sword made of nightmares. Veins of black energy were pulsing under Izuku's skin. He looked like a demon. Stop. Izuku gasped, fighting his own hands. Stop it. He's had enough. Not enough. The villain was now a shriveled husk, a pile of dry, gray sludge on the concrete. He was barely alive, in a deep comatose state, every ounce of stamina drained. Izuku planted his feet. He screamed, wrenching his hands back. It felt like pulling his own arm out of a bear trap. With a wet tear, the black blade dislodged from the villain. The connection broke. The sudden loss of the inflow caused a backlash. The black lightning discharged violently, shattering the windows of the surrounding buildings. The sword dissolved into mist, rushing back into Izuku's chest. Izuku stood there for a second, swaying. The blackness faded from his scara. The power evaporated, leaving him filled, but terrified. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. He looked at the dried husk of the villain. He looked at Katsuki, who was staring at him as if he were a stranger. Izuku whispered. I saved you. Then, the exhaustion hit. Not the empty, cold exhaustion he was used to, but the heaviness of a vessel that had been overfilled, and then emptied too fast. His knees buckled. He fell forward. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the terrified faces of the pro-heroes, and death arms pointing a gun at him. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by the beep of a monitor. Izuku opened his eyes. The ceiling was unfamiliar. White tiles. Fluorescent lights. The smell of antiseptic. A hospital. He tried to sit up, but his hands were restrained. He looked down. Thick, metal cuffs bound his wrists to the bed rails. They weren't normal handcuffs. They were bulky, glowing with a soft blue light. Quirk suppressors. Panic spiked in his chest. Calm down, Midoriya. A voice came from the corner of the room. Izuku turned his head. A man in a tan trench coat and a matching hat sat in a chair, a notebook in his hand. He looked tired. Beside him sat a skeletal figure with sunken eyes and messy blonde hair. All Might. All Might? Izuku croaked. His throat felt dry. Am I arrested? The detective closed his notebook. I am Detective Sakachi Naomasa. And to answer your question, technically you are in protective custody. But given the nature of the incident, we had to take precautions. The incident. Izuku's memory flashed. The fire. The sludge. The sword. The hunger. Kaken! Is he okay? Bakugo Katsuki is fine, Sakachi said calmly. He suffered minor burns and smoke inhalation, but he's physically intact. He's shaken, but alive. And the villain? Izuku asked, his voice barely a whisper. He remembered the feeling of the life force draining away. The exquisite taste of it. He felt bile rise in his throat. Sakachi exchanged a glance with All Might. The villain is alive, Sakachi said carefully. But he is in a critical, comatose state. His quirk factor has been severely damaged. His body's cellular energy reserves were depleted to near-fatal levels. It's as if he aged 50 years in 30 seconds. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. I didn't mean to. I wanted to save him. I didn't know I could do that. I thought I was quirkless. Quirkless? Sakachi raised an eyebrow. Midoriya, the readings we got from you in that alleyway were off the charts. We've never seen a quirk manifestation this late in life that was this volatile. Young Midoriya, All Might spoke up. His voice was soft, lacking his usual boisterous tone. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Do you remember what happened? Specifically the weapon? The sword, Izuku whispered. He could still feel it. It was dormant now, sleeping in his soul, purring like a satiated cat. It came out of me. It told me to feed. Feed, All Might repeated grimly. We've run some preliminary tests while you were unconscious, Sakachi said. Your blood work is chaotic. Your body seems to act as a containment vessel for a highly dense energy form. When that energy manifests, the sword, it requires fuel. If it doesn't get fuel from an external source, it takes it from me, Izuku finished. Realization washed over him. The cold. The fatigue. The anemia. That's why I've always been sick. It's been eating me. All this time, it's been eating me. Silence hung heavy in the room. It's a parasitic relationship, Sakachi noted, writing something down. Or perhaps symbiotic, if you can control it. But right now, the law views it as a predatory quirk. Dangerous. Potentially lethal. Am I a villain? Izuku asked, tears spilling down his cheeks. I just wanted to be a hero. Like you, All Might. All Might stood up. He walked to the bedside. He looked down at the boy, frail, handcuffed, terrified of his own soul. He thought back to the roof. To what he had said. You can't be a hero. And yet, when the pros stood still, this boy ran in. With a power that craved death, he had saved a life. You are not a villain, Midoriya, All Might said firmly. He reached out and placed a large hand on Izuku's head. On that roof, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. I judged you based on what I saw. But I saw something else today. I saw a boy, consumed by fear and weakness, run into a fire to save a classmate who tormented him. You wielded a nightmare to save a life. All Might smiled, but it wasn't his trademark grin. It was small, sad, and genuine. Power is not good or evil, young man. It is simply power. What defines a hero is not the nature of their ability, but the nature of their heart. That sword, it is dark. It is hungry. It is terrifying. But if you can hold it, if you can command it, rather than letting it command you, All Might looked at Sakachi. I will vouch for him, detective. UA has programs for managing dangerous quirks. Sakachi sighed, rubbing his temples. I figured you would say that. Eraserhead isn't going to like this. All Might looked back at Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. You have a long, hard road ahead of you. Harder than anyone else's. You will have to fight that voice in your head every single day. But if you are willing to fight, Izuku looked up. The hum in his chest was quiet, listening. I am, Izuku said. The tears didn't stop, but his voice was steady. I want to be a hero. Even if I have to be a monster to do it. All Might nodded, then rest now. The storm has only just begun. To hold the sword is to hold the wolf by the ears. To let go is to die, to hold on is to be bitten. The quarantine wing of the Musudafu General Hospital was quiet, save for the rhythmic, mechanical sigh of ventilation systems and the low buzzing of fluorescent lights. It was a silence that felt heavy, pressurized, like the air before a thunderstorm. In room 404, Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of a reinforced medical bed. He was no longer handcuffed, but the heavy magnetic bracelets around his wrists, quirk suppressors turned to maximum output, remained. They hummed against his skin, a dull, numbing vibration that made his fingers feel distant, as if they belonged to someone else. He was staring at an apple. It sat on the plastic tray table, red and waxy. A normal apple. But to Izuku, it looked different than it had 2 days ago. He could see the texture of the skin with unnatural clarity. More disturbingly, he could sense it. It was faint, barely a whisper compared to the roaring bonfire of a human soul, but he could feel the chemical energy stored within the fruit's sugar bonds. Fuel, the voice in the back of his mind murmured. Meager. Insufficient. But fuel. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head to dislodge the thought. The voice wasn't auditory. It was a compulsion, an instinct that had wormed its way into his neocortex. It was the same instinct that told a shark to bite when it smelled blood. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Izuku flinched, his eyes snapping open. A team of 3 people entered. Leading them was Dr. Tsubasa, the same specialist who had diagnosed him as quirkless nearly a decade ago. Behind him was Detective Tsukachi, looking even more haggard than before, and a tall, waifish woman with purple hair and glasses, a quirk counselor from the Hero Public Safety Commission. Dr. Tsubasa adjusted his thick goggles, looking at Izuku not with familiarity, but with the cold fascination of a biologist observing a new, dangerous species of bacteria. Good morning, Midoriya, the doctor said, flipping through a thick clipboard. We have your test results. Izuku swallowed hard. Am I sick? In a manner of speaking, Tsubasa muttered. He clipped an X-ray to the light board on the wall. Though sick implies a disease that can be cured. This is something else. He tapped the X-ray. It showed Izuku's chest cavity. Your heart. Tsubasa pointed to the dark mass in the center. It's functioning, but the rhythm is incredibly slow. Resting heart rate of 35 beats per minute. In a normal human, this would mean heart failure. In you, it's a necessity. He pointed to the area surrounding the heart, where the film showed strange, shadowy tendrils webbing out through his ribcage. We found a secondary circulatory system, Tsubasa explained. It doesn't pump blood. It pumps a form of dark energy that we can't identify on the periodic table. It's highly volatile. It mimics the behavior of necrotic tissue, but it's alive. The woman from the commission stepped forward. Midoriya, do you understand how quirks usually work? They are biological functions. Muscles, organs, emitters. They use stamina. Yes, Izuku whispered. Your quirk, she said, her voice clipped and professional, is different. It is an energy sink. It is a void. Based on our observation of the sludge villain incident, your body is essentially a vessel for a sentient, predatory energy construct. To exist, it consumes energy. If you do not feed it, it feeds on you. Izuku looked down at his pale, thin arms. That's why I'm always cold. Precisely, Tsubasa said. Your body is in a constant state of caloric deficit because the quirk, this entity, is eating your metabolic energy to sustain itself. You are being metabolized from the inside out. Izuku felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. So I'm dying? You've been dying for 10 years, Tsubasa said bluntly. The fact that you are still walking is a medical impossibility. But when you activated the sword, the tables turned. You reversed the flow. Tsukachi stepped in, sensing Izuku's rising panic. He placed a hand on the bed rail. Midoriya, the commission has classified your quirk. Pending a hero license, it is registered as a Class A dangerous emitter. They've named it Soul Eater. Soul Eater, Izuku repeated. The words tasted like ash. That sounds like a villain's name. Names have power, kid, Tsukachi said softly. But they are just labels. The issue right now is legal, not medical. You used a quirk without a license and caused severe bodily harm to a villain. The sludge villain is in the ICU. He's aged 40 years. He will likely never walk again. Izuku's breath hitched. I didn't mean to. I know, Tsukachi said. And because it was self-defense, and defense of another, you aren't being charged. However, the commission woman adjusted her glasses. The HPSC is concerned. A power that permanently maims opponents by draining their life force is problematic for a hero. It is cruel. It violates the ethical statutes of modern heroism. There is a discussion about whether you should be allowed to train at all, or if you should be placed under permanent inhibition. Permanent inhibition. That meant wearing the cuffs for the rest of his life. Never using the power. Letting the cold eat him until he withered away. No, Izuku said. The word was quiet, but the air in the room shifted. The apple on the tray table suddenly turned gray and collapsed into dust. The monitors spiked. The lights flickered. I want to be a hero, Izuku said, his voice trembling but gaining volume. He looked at the woman. I saved Kaken when the pros did nothing. My power, it might be scary. It might be hungry, but it saved him. The woman took a step back, alarmed by the sudden pressure in the room. Tsubasa looked at his readings, eyes wide. He's draining the ambient electricity from the room, Tsubasa warned. Midoriya, calm down. I won't let you lock me up, Izuku said. The shadows under his bed seemed to lengthen, curling up the metal legs like vines. I won't be useless anymore. Before the situation could escalate, the door opened again. I think that is quite enough. The tension broke instantly. Standing in the doorway, ducking his head to fit through the frame, was a tall, skeletal man in a baggy yellow suit. He looked frail, but his presence was mountainous. All Might? The commission woman gasped. All Might walked into the room. He didn't smile. He looked at the doctors, then at the commission agent. I have spoken with the directors, All Might said, his voice raspy but authoritative. I have agreed to take full responsibility for young Midoriya. He will be under my personal supervision. All Might, with all due respect, the woman started, this boy is a walking biohazard. His quirk is parasitic, and my quirk breaks meteorites, All Might countered. Power is dangerous, Ms. Kamita. That is why we train. To deny this boy the chance to learn control is to condemn him to be a victim of his own biology. Or worse, to push him into the shadows where that hunger might find less savory targets. He turned his blue eyes to Izuku. I will guide him. If he steps out of line, the burden falls on me. The room was silent. No one argued with the symbol of peace. 2 hours later, the room was empty except for Izuku and the skeletal hero. All Might pulled a chair close to the bed. He sat heavily, a wheeze escaping his lips. Izuku watched him, battling with the lingering fear of his own outburst. You defended yourself well, All Might said gently. Though you owe the hospital a new apple. Izuku looked at the pile of gray dust on his tray. I'm sorry. It just happens. When I get emotional, the hunger gets loud. That is the first lesson, All Might said. He leaned forward. Midoriya, I must be honest with you. When I met you on that roof, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. I was looking at a boy with no power. Now I look at you, and I see a boy with too much power. Too much? That sword, All Might touched his own chest, wincing slightly. I have faced many evils in my life. I have faced quirks that steal, quirks that destroy, quirks that rot. But what I felt in that alleyway, it was ancient. It felt like a predator that has been sleeping for a very long time. Izuku gripped his knees. Does that mean I'm evil? Is the quirk evil? No, All Might said firmly. A gun is not evil. A tornado is not evil. They are forces. But this force has a will. It wants to feed. Your challenge, young Midoriya, will not be learning how to punch or kick. It will be learning how to starve the beast without killing the host. All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was a training regiment. I cannot give you my power, All Might said, a strange melancholic look crossing his face. I had considered looking for a successor recently. But your body is fighting a war just to keep you alive. Adding one for all to your system would likely kill you instantly. You are already full, Izuku nodded. He didn't need another power. He barely understood the one he had. However, All Might continued, I can give you my knowledge. I can teach you how to build a vessel strong enough to contain that sword. I can teach you the heart of a hero. He held out his hand. Yue is 10 months away. It will be hell. You will be fighting your own instincts every step of the way. But if you can master this, you can be the hero who saves people from the monsters, because you will know exactly how monsters think. Izuku looked at the hand. The hand of the greatest hero. He reached out. His own hand was pale, trembling, and cold. But when he gripped All Might's hand, he didn't drain him. He held on tight. I'll do it, Izuku said. I'll master it. Good, All Might stood up. Rest now. Tomorrow, we go to the beach. The Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of garbage. Mountains of scrap metal, old tires, and rotting appliances stretched along the coastline, blocking the view of the ocean. It was 5 a.m. The sky was a bruised purple, the sun threatening to rise over the horizon. The air was salty and cool. Izuku stood in the sand, wearing a green tracksuit that hung loosely on his frame. He shivered, wrapping his arms around himself. Ideally, All Might said, standing atop a pile of refrigerators in his muscle form, for the dramatic effect, we would focus on muscle building. But for you, muscle is secondary. We must focus on will. He jumped down, deflating into his true form with a puff of steam. The doctor said your quirk is Soul Eater, All Might said. Do you like that name? No, Izuku said immediately. It sounds villainous. Then rename it, All Might said. Take ownership of it. What does it feel like? Izuku closed his eyes. He listened to the hum. It wasn't just a hunger. It was a turbulence. It felt like the pressure drop before a typhoon. It was kinetic and electric and dark. It was a promise of violence. It feels like a storm, Izuku whispered. It feels like holding a storm in my chest. Stormbringer, All Might mused. A heavy name. But fitting. He pointed to the ocean. Draw it. Izuku froze. What? Draw the sword, All Might commanded. Here. Now. Where no one can get hurt. I don't know if I can control it, Izuku stammered. What if I hurt you? I am the symbol of peace. All Might laughed, though his eyes were serious. I can handle a teenager with a butter knife. Draw it, Midoriya. Confront the thing inside you. Izuku swallowed. He stepped away from All Might, facing the ocean. He closed his eyes. He focused on the hum. Wake up. The response was immediate. Hunger. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Pain shot through Izuku's chest, sharp and cold. Shadows began to bleed from his skin, staining the sand black. The air temperature dropped 10 degrees instantly. Izuku reached into his chest. It felt like reaching into freezing water. His fingers closed around something solid, a hilt that wasn't there physically, but existed metaphysically within his own soul. He pulled. With a sound like tearing metal, the black blade emerged. Izuku screamed. It hurt. It felt like ripping a rib out of his body. The sword fully manifested in his hand, a 6-foot nightmare of jagged energy, pulsing with violet runes. The weight of it was immense, not physically, but spiritually. It pulled at his arm, and then it moved. Izuku didn't swing it. It swung him. The blade jerked to the left, dragging Izuku with it, slashing horizontally toward a pile of trash. Slash. A rusted truck chassis was cleaved in two. The metal didn't just cut, it groaned and withered, turning to brown dust where the blade touched it. Stop! All Might shouted. I can't! Izuku yelled. The blade jerked right, aiming for All Might. Bright soul. Strong soul. Eat. The sword wanted All Might. It salivated at the sheer density of one for all. Izuku planted his feet in the sand, digging his heels in. He grabbed his right wrist with his left hand, physically wrestling his own limb. No! Izuku screamed at the weapon. No! He is friend. Food. No! The blade vibrated, sending shockwaves of pain up Izuku's arm. It was a battle of wills. The sword was a wild horse, a rabid dog. It didn't care about morality. It only cared about entropy. Izuku fell to his knees, forcing the blade into the sand. Dismiss, he gritted out. Go back. Go back. He let go of the hilt. Usually, dropping a sword disarms you. But Stormbringer didn't fall. It hovered for a second, buzzing with frustration, before dissolving into black mist and shooting back into Izuku's chest. Izuku collapsed, gasping for air. He felt lighter, but also hollowed out. All Might was beside him in an instant. Are you alright? Izuku wheezed, clutching his heart. It wanted to kill you. It hates you. It doesn't hate me, All Might said grimly, looking at the pile of rust that used to be a truck. It just recognizes a large meal. Midoriya, listen to me. Izuku looked up. You cannot overpower that thing with muscle, All Might said. You have to overpower it with conviction. You have to be the alpha. Right now, it thinks it owns you. You have to prove it wrong. How? Meditation, All Might said. Discipline. And feeding it on your own terms. All Might walked over to a discarded car battery lying in the sand. He picked it up. The doctor said it eats energy. Electricity, chemical bonds, life force. Life force is the most potent, but it's not the only source. He tossed the battery to Izuku. Drain it. Don't manifest the sword. Just touch it and pull the energy out. Feed the beast a snack so it stops trying to eat the chef. Izuku held the battery. It was heavy, covered in grime. He focused. Not on the sword but on the conduit, the veins in his hands. Drink, he thought. Just a sip. He felt the acid in the battery. He felt the charge. He pulled. Sparks flew. The battery hissed. Izuku felt a jolt of warmth rush up his arms, settling in his chest. It wasn't the intoxicating rush of the sludge villain's life force, but it was soothing. The hum quieted down. The cold receded slightly. Better? All Might asked. Yeah, Izuku breathed. It's quiet. Good, All Might grinned. Now, clean up this trash. By hand. Without the sword. What? You need a body that doesn't break when that thing moves you. Move that fridge. Month 3, the bargain. The training was brutal. For anyone else, it would have been physical torture. For Izuku, it was a balancing act on a razor's edge. If he worked out too hard, he burned calories. If he burned calories, the beast got hungry. If the beast got hungry, he got cold, dizzy, and weak. He had to carry high-density energy bars with him everywhere. He ate constantly, yet gained no weight. He looked like a famine victim, ribs showing, eyes sunken, pale as a ghost. School was a different kind of hell. The rumor had spread. Deku has a quirk. A villain quirk. He ate a guy. People didn't bully him anymore. Katsuki didn't pop explosions near him. They avoided him. They gave him a wide berth in the hallways. If he looked at someone, they flinched. Izuku sat alone at lunch, eating his 4th calorie bar, reading a book on meditation techniques All Might had given him. Mental fortresses and you. He closed his eyes. Inside his mind, it was a dark ocean. In the center of the ocean stood a cage made of green light. Inside the cage, the shadow swirled. It looked like a wolf, or maybe a dragon made of smoke. Let me out, the shadow hissed. No, Mental Izuku said. Not until I say so. I can make you a god. We can eat this whole school. So much life here. Bright young sparks. We protect them, Izuku said calmly, reinforcing the bars of the cage. We do not eat them. The shadow snarled and slammed against the bars. In the real world, a pencil on Izuku's desk snapped in half. Izuku opened his eyes. He sighed, picking up the pieces. Still work to do. Month 6, the partial manifestation. It was raining at the beach. A heavy, torrential downpour. Izuku stood shirtless in the rain. His body had changed. He wasn't bulky like All Might. He was lean, like a whipcord. His muscles were dense, compact wires under his translucent skin. Focus! All Might shouted over the rain. You don't need the whole sword. The sword is clumsy. You need the edge. Izuku stood before a massive pile of rubber tires. Drawing the full sword took too much time and energy. He needed to access the power without the full transformation. He focused on his right arm. He didn't reach into his chest. He pushed the energy out to his fingertips. Coat the arm, he commanded. Black lightning crackled around his forearm. The shadows bled out of his pores, forming a gauntlet of darkness that wrapped around his hand, ending in claw-like tips. It wasn't the sword, but it was the substance of the sword. Black Claw! Izuku yelled. He slashed at the tires. The shadow gauntlet moved with blinding speed. He tore through the rubber stacks. The tires didn't just cut, the edges cauterized and withered. Izuku moved, spinning, dancing through the rain. He wasn't using the sword to pull him. He was moving his own body, augmented by the energy he had siphoned from a generator earlier that morning. He felt fast. Incredibly fast. He finished the combo, landing in a crouch. The shadow gauntlet evaporated. Excellent! All Might clapped. Control. Precision. You didn't leak any unnecessary aura. Izuku stood up, panting. He smiled. For the first time in months, he felt powerful, not just possessed. I think I'm getting it. You are, All Might said. But remember that energy you just used? You have to replace it. Here. He tossed Izuku a thermos of high-glucose electrolyte solution. Izuku downed it in one gulp. Month 9, the scream. The incident happened 2 weeks before the exam. Izuku was walking home late from the beach. He was tired. His reserves were low. He took a shortcut through a park. Hey, look at this walking corpse. 3 men stepped out from behind the public restrooms. They smelled of cheap alcohol and bad intentions. One of them, a man with rock-like skin, cracked his knuckles. Give us your wallet, kid. Maybe we can buy you a sandwich. Izuku stopped. He looked at them. Please, Izuku said, his voice raspy. I don't want trouble. Just let me pass. Or what? The rock man laughed. He lunged, grabbing Izuku by the collar. Contact. The moment the man touched Izuku, the hunger flared. It was instinct. Izuku's reserves were low, and here was a source of fresh bioenergy touching him. Eat. Izuku's eyes flashed black. Don't. Izuku gasped, grabbing the man's wrist. But he couldn't stop the siphon completely. Black sparks arced from Izuku's hand into the man's rock skin. The man screamed. My arm! My arm! The rock skin began to crack and crumble, turning into gray dust. The muscle beneath withered. Izuku panicked. He tried to pull away, but the energy flow was like a magnet. The man's life force was rushing into him, sweet and terrifying. I said let go. Izuku shouted. He visualized the cage. He visualized the lock. He slammed the door shut in his mind. Slam. The connection severed. Izuku was thrown back, hitting a tree. The thug fell to the ground, clutching his arm. His skin was gray, the arm looking like it belonged to an 80-year-old man. The other 2 thugs stared in horror. Monster! One screamed. He's a monster! They ran, dragging their injured friend with them. Izuku sat under the tree, trembling. He felt great. The influx of energy had cleared his headache, warmed his blood, and stopped the shaking of his hands. He felt stronger than he had in weeks. And that was the worst part. He looked at his hands. I heard him, Izuku whispered. And I liked it. He curled into a ball, the hum purring contentedly in his chest. He realized then that the battle would never be over. He could train his body, he could build mental walls, but the sword would always be there, waiting for him to slip. Waiting for him to enjoy the taste of life. The day of the exam. The morning of the UA entrance exam was bright and clear. Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom. He had grown. He was taller now, though still incredibly lean. He wore the standard black middle school uniform, but it fit better across his shoulders. His skin was pale alabaster. His hair was a mess of black and green curls, but there was a single streak of pure white in his bangs, a scar from the stress of the last 10 months. He picked up a small, insulated canister and clipped it to his belt. It contained high-density battery cells. Snacks. Izuku? His mother stood at the door. She looked worried. She always looked worried these days. Here, she said, handing him a bento. It's extra sugary. Like the doctor said? Thanks, Mom, Izuku said, taking it. She hesitated, then reached out and hugged him. She flinched slightly when she touched him. He was always cold, but she held on. "You're a good boy, Izuku," she sobbed. "No matter what that power is, you're a good boy." Izuku hugged her back, closing his eyes. He carefully kept the hum suppressed, locking the beast in its cage so it wouldn't dare try to feed on his mother. "I'll do my best," he said. The gates of UA. The massive glass structure of UA High glittered in the sun. Thousands of students were walking toward the entrance. Izuku stepped through the gate. "Stupid Deku." Izuku didn't flinch. He turned his head. Katsuki Bakugo was walking past him. Katsuki looked different too. He was bigger, more muscular. But the look in his eyes when he saw Izuku wasn't the old arrogance. It was guarded. "Don't get in my way," Katsuki grunted. "And don't go crazy in there. I have it under control, Kaken," Izuku said calmly. "You better," Katsuki scoffed. "I'm not gonna be the one to put you down if you turn into a villain." He walked away. Izuku watched him go. He took a deep breath. "Hungry?" the voice asked. "Quiet," Izuku murmured. He walked forward, tripping slightly on a loose brick. He braced for impact, but he didn't fall. He floated. "Whoa! Are you okay?" A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his shoulder. Her fingers were warm. Izuku stiffened. Contact. He instantly visualized the cage. He clamped down on his aura so hard his chest ached. He couldn't let the drain happen. Not even a little. I'm fine," Izuku said, pulling away gently. He landed on his feet. "It's my quirk," she smiled brightly. "Sorry for using it without asking. It's bad luck to fall, right?" She was so bright. Her aura was like a warm sun. The beast inside him scratched at the bars, salivating. So much light. "One bite. Just one." "Thank you," Izuku said, his voice tight. He backed away. "I have to go." He hurried inside, leaving a confused Uraraka Ochako behind. The orientation hall. Present mic was loud. Very loud. "Everybody say hey." Silence. Izuku sat in his seat, ignoring the spectacle. He was analyzing the pamphlet. The practical exam. Robots, Izuku thought. Inorganic. Batteries. Oil. Electricity. He smiled grimly. If the enemies were human, he would be in trouble. He would have to hold back constantly. But robots? Robots didn't have souls. Robots didn't feel pain. Robots are a buffet. "Excuse me, sir." A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up. "The pamphlet says there are 4 types of villains, but you only mentioned 3. If this is a mistake, it is shameful for a school of UA's caliber. And you," he pointed a stiff finger directly at Izuku, "you've been muttering to yourself this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to play tourist, leave." The auditorium turned to look at Izuku. Izuku looked up. His eyes, sunken and shadowed, met the boy's gaze. "I'm not muttering," Izuku said quietly, but the acoustic design of the hall carried his voice. "I'm planning my meal." The boy blinked. "Excuse me?" "The robots," Izuku said. "They run on electricity. I'm figuring out the most efficient way to dismantle them." He turned back to his paper. The blue-haired boy, Ida Tenya, sat down, looking unsettled. Battle Center B. The gates to the mock city were enormous. A crowd of examinees stood waiting, stretching, psyching themselves up. Izuku stood at the back. He was trembling. Not from fear, but from anticipation. The beast knew it was about to be let off the leash. "Start!" Present Mike yelled from the tower. "There's no countdown in real battles. Go! Go! Go!" The other students hesitated for a fraction of a second. Izuku didn't. He didn't run. He exploded forward. Black lightning crackled around his legs. He channeled the energy stored in his battery pack, flooding his muscles. He moved like a shadow, blurring past the other students. "What was that?" someone yelled. Izuku was already in the city. A one-pointer crashed through a wall ahead of him. It locked onto him. Target acquired. Izuku didn't slow down. He didn't draw the sword. He didn't need it. He lunged, his hand coated in the black claw. He slammed his palm onto the robot's chassis. Drain. The robot's red eye flickered and died instantly. The machine collapsed, its internal battery completely siphoned in a microsecond. Izuku vaulted over the scrap metal, the energy from the robot fueling his next jump. He felt amazing. The cold was gone. He was burning with power. A three-pointer appeared. A massive missile launcher type. Izuku grinned. His teeth looked sharper than usual. More, he whispered. He launched himself into the air, a streak of black and green. In the observation room, the teachers watched the screens. That movement. Midnight murmured. He's not destroying them with force. He's turning them off. He's eating them, Snipe corrected, adjusting his hat. Look at the thermal readings. The moment he touches them, their heat signature drops to 0. It's chilling. Power, All Might whispered, watching the screen with a mix of pride and terror. But can he stop? The 0-pointer. The exam was winding down. Izuku had 50 points. He was overflowing with energy. His skin was glowing faintly. He felt like he could run forever. Then, the ground shook. The 0-pointer emerged. It was colossal, taller than the skyscrapers. It punched the ground, sending a shockwave that knocked students off their feet. Run! Someone screamed. It's huge! The students fled. It was an obstacle to be avoided. Izuku turned to run as well. He had enough points. Survival was the priority. Ow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling concrete. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka Ochako was trapped under rubble, right in the path of the 0-pointer's treads. The students were running away. The teachers were watching. She will die, the voice said. Too slow. Izuku looked at the massive robot. It was a mountain of metal. A mountain of energy. I can't stop that with just a claw, Izuku thought. I need more. He needed the sword, but drawing the sword in a crowd was dangerous. The fear aura alone could incapacitate the other students. He didn't care. Izuku turned and sprinted toward the robot. Midoriya! Ida shouted from the distance. What are you doing? Izuku leaped. He used every ounce of the stolen energy in his legs to launch himself hundreds of feet into the air, soaring toward the face of the 0-pointer. As he reached the apex of his jump, suspended in the air against the backdrop of the sun, he reached into his chest. Awaken! Izuku roared. The sky darkened. Clouds swirled unnaturally fast above the city. A blast of purple and black pressure wave exploded from Izuku. Below, students fell to their knees, overcome by a sudden, primal wave of dread. Izuku pulled. The Stormbringer emerged. This time, it was fully formed. The runes screamed with light. The blade was 7 feet of jagged void. Izuku held it with both hands. He was just a speck compared to the robot. But the sword was hungry. Storm. Izuku swung. Sever. A crescent moon of black energy flew from the blade. It hit the 0-pointer's head. There was no explosion. There was no sound of crumpling metal. The massive robot simply split. A clean, silent line appeared down the center of the Titan. The cut glowed violet for a second. Then, the energy absorption kicked in. The black blade howled. It sucked the kinetic energy, the electrical energy, the potential energy of the falling mass. The massive robot began to rust in midair. By the time the two halves hit the ground, they were brittle, crumbling scrap metal. Izuku hovered in the air for a second, buoyed by the sheer updraft of power. Then, gravity took hold. He fell. His legs were broken, not from the jump, but from the sheer recoil of channeling that much power through his bones. The sword vanished, satisfied, leaving him empty again. He plummeted toward the asphalt. Slap! A hand touched his face. He stopped inches from the ground. Uraraka, floating on a piece of debris, had slapped him. She released her breath, and they both crashed to the ground. Izuku lay there, staring at the sky. His arm was purple. His legs were twisted. But he was alive. The buzzer sounded. Time's up. Silence descended on the city. Izuku turned his head. Uraraka was vomiting rainbows nearby. He looked at his hand. Faint wisps of black smoke were still curling off his fingers. Good meal, the voice purred. We sleep now. Izuku closed his eyes and let the darkness take him, a small smile on his face. He had done it. He was a hero. And he hadn't eaten anyone, except the robot. We build walls not to keep the monsters out, but to keep the monsters we created in. The infirmary at UA High was a place of sterility and light, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the testing grounds. It smelled of ozone and antiseptic. Izuku Midoriya lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He was conscious, but he felt incredibly distant, as if his mind were floating a few feet above his body. His limbs felt heavy, filled with a dull, throbbing ache that pulsed in time with his slow heartbeat. Remarkable, a voice muttered. And terrifying. Izuku turned his head slowly. Recovery Girl, the youthful heroine, was standing on a stool, peering at a monitor displaying Izuku's vitals. Next to her stood All Might, looking comically large in the small medical space, his expression grim. "What is it?" Izuku rasped. His throat felt like he had swallowed sandpaper. "Usually, dearie," Recovery Girl said, hopping down and waddling over to him, "my quirk works by accelerating the body's natural healing process using the patient's own stamina. If they don't have enough stamina, the process can kill them." She gestured to his legs. They were wrapped in casts, but Izuku could feel that the bones were already knit. "Your legs were shattered," she said bluntly. "Comminuted fractures. But by the time the stretchers got you here, the bones had already fused. You didn't use your stamina though." She pointed a cane at his chest. "You used the robots." Izuku looked down. Through the thin hospital gown, he could see the faint, spiderweb-like tracings of black veins fading on his chest. "The energy I absorbed from the zero-pointer," Izuku whispered. "The sword fed it to me? It metabolized the kinetic and electrical energy into biological regeneration," Recovery Girl said, shaking her head. "I've never seen anything like it. It's efficient, I'll give you that. But it's violent. The tissue scarring is minimal, but the cellular density in your legs has increased. You're literally becoming harder to kill the more you feed." She sighed, looking at her own hands. "I didn't dare use my quirk on you. If I had tried to boost your life force, well, that thing inside you might have seen me as a juice box. You're a difficult patient, Midoriya Izuku." "I'm sorry," Izuku said, looking away. "Don't be sorry," All Might said softly. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "You saved young Uraraka. You passed the exam, Midoriya." Izuku's eyes widened. "I passed? With flying colors?" All Might grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. 50 combat points. And 60 rescue points for the finale. You place first. First place. It was the dream he had held onto since he was 4 years old. He had done it. He had beaten the odds, beaten his quirkless diagnosis, beaten the ridicule. But he didn't feel triumphant. He felt cold. "But the teachers?" Izuku asked, looking at the door. "They saw it. They saw the sword. They felt the dread." All Might's smile faded. He exchanged a look with Recovery Girl. "There is a debate," All Might admitted. "Your performance was undeniable. But the nature of your power has raised flags with the administration. There are those who believe UA is not equipped to contain a quirk of this magnitude." "Am I expelled before I even start?" "No," All Might said firmly. "I vouch for you." Principal Nizu is intrigued. "But you will face scrutiny. There is a teacher, a specific homeroom teacher, who acts as a gatekeeper. If you are assigned to his class, you must be careful." All Might leaned in close, his blue eyes intense. "He does not care about raw power. He cares about control. If he thinks you are a liability, he will cut you loose without a second thought. You must show him that you hold the sword, Midoriya, not the other way around." The faculty meeting. While Izuku was being discharged, a war of words was being fought in the High Alliance meeting room. A holographic screen displayed the footage of the zero-pointer incident. It played on a loop, the black sky, the violet slash, the Titan crumbling into rust. "It's a villain's quirk," Vlad King said, crossing his arms. "Look at the terror effect." The other examinees were paralyzed. "We're training heroes, not nightmares." "Fear is a tool," Snipe argued, adjusting his mask. "Batman types use it. The kid didn't hurt anyone. He saved the girl." "He ate a giant robot," Midnight pointed out, shivering slightly. "Whatever that sword is, it consumes existence. If he loses his temper in a sparring match, we could lose a student. Which is why he needs to be here," Cementus rumbled. "Where else can he go? If we reject him, and he falls into the wrong hands, Can you imagine that power directed at society? At the head of the table, a small creature, mouse, bear, dog, sat with his paws clasped. Principal Niza's eyes gleamed with dangerous intelligence. A valid point, Niza chirped. The boy is a walking singularity. Dangerous? Yes. But heroics is a dangerous business. The question isn't about the quirk, but the mind behind it. Niza turned his gaze to the man sitting in the corner. Shota Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead, was slouched in his chair, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He was watching the footage with bored, bloodshot eyes. Aizawa, Niza said. I'm assigning him to Class 1A. The room went quiet. You're giving the problem child to the executioner? Midnight asked, surprised. Aizawa didn't blink. He watched the screen, specifically the moment after the slash, when Izuku fell. He watched the boy's limbs flail, broken and helpless. He has power, Aizawa muttered, his voice raspy. But he's unstable. He relies on the weapon too much. Without it, he's just a frail child breaking his own bones. Aizawa stood up, his capture scarf shifting around his neck like a living snake. I'll take him, Aizawa said. But if he slips, if I see even a hint that the quirk is driving the bus, I'm expelling him. Immediately. The first day, April arrived with a wash of cherry blossoms and anxiety. Izuku stood before the mirror in his bedroom. The Yui gray blazer fit him well, tailored to hide the unnatural thinness of his frame. He adjusted the red tie, his fingers trembling slightly. He checked his belt. The specially made pouches were there, filled with high-calorie nutrient jelly and compact battery cells. His medication. Izuku! You're going to be late. Inko called from the kitchen. Coming! He grabbed his yellow backpack. He paused, looking at the All Might poster on his door. I'm here, he thought. I made it. Hunger, the beast whispered from the cage in his mind. New hunting grounds. School, Izuku corrected internally. Learning grounds. He left the house. The train ride was uneventful, though Izuku noticed people giving him a wide berth. He had bags under his eyes that no amount of sleep could cure, and his skin was so pale it looked almost gray in the morning light. The single streak of white hair in his bangs stood out like a scar. He arrived at the massive gates of UA. The barrier. The H-shape of the building loomed over him. He navigated the hallways, his heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. 1A. 1A. He found the door. It was enormous. He took a deep breath. Just open the door. Be normal. Don't bring out the sword. Don't eat anyone's homework. He slid the door open. Remove your foot from the desk. Ha! Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? Izuku froze. The volume in the room was already at an 11. Tenya Ida was standing over Katsuki Bakugo's desk, chopping his hands in a robotic reprimand. Bakugo was leaning back, feet up, sneering. Then Bakugo saw him. The sneer vanished. Bakugo's legs dropped from the desk. He sat up straight, his posture defensive. The air in the room shifted. The other students, sensing the change in the explosive blonde, turned to look at the door. It's him, someone whispered. The one who cut the sky. Ida spun around. He marched toward Izuku. Midoriya! Ida announced loudly. Good morning. I am Ida Tenya from Semi-Private Academy. I must apologize for my behavior at the exam. You perceived the true nature of the test while I was blinded by the surface level. I misjudged you. Oh, it's okay, Izuku stammered, waving his hands. I didn't really perceive anything. I just reacted. And you? A bubbly voice chirped from behind him. Izuku turned. It was Uraraka. You're the plain-looking boy. You passed. She beamed, pumping her fists. That punch, well, slice, was amazing. Scared the life out of me, but amazing. Uraraka-san, Izuku blushed. Her aura was still so bright. It was like standing next to a heater. He instinctively took a half-step back to keep the beast from sniffing at her. I'm glad you're okay. We should wonder what the ceremony will be like, Uraraka chatted on. Or the teacher. I wonder who it is. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. Izuku looked down. Lying in a yellow sleeping bag like a caterpillar was a man with long, messy black hair and tired eyes. He sucked on a jelly pouch. The class went dead silent. The man unzipped the bag and stood up. He looked disheveled, unshaven, and utterly unimpressed. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said. Time is limited. You kids are not rational enough. He stepped behind the podium. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Homeroom teacher? The class thought collectively. He looks like a hobo. Izuku felt a chill. He recognized the hero. Eraserhead. The underground hero. Aizawa's eyes scanned the room. They lingered on Bakugo, then Todoroki, and finally settled on Izuku. When Aizawa looked at him, Izuku felt a strange sensation. The hum in his chest faltered. It was as if the connection to the sword had been pinched. For a second, the hunger vanished, but so did the artificial vitality that kept Izuku standing. He felt his knees weaken, a sudden wave of exhaustion hitting him. Then Aizawa looked away, and the hum returned. Put these on, Aizawa said, pulling a gym uniform out of his sleeping bag. And meet me on the grounds. The assessment. The P grounds were open and sunny. The class of 1A stood in their blue tracksuits. A quirk apprehension test? The class shouted. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you want to be heroes, you don't have time for frilly niceties, Aizawa said, his back to them. UA is a school without restrictions. That means I run this class how I see fit. He turned around, his dark eyes narrowing. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. You did these in middle school without quirks. Now you'll use them. He tossed the ball to Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw in middle school? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk. Anything goes, as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He rolled his shoulders, glaring at the ball. Die! Boom! The explosion was massive. The ball rocketed into the sky. Die! Izuku thought. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! That's awesome! Kaminari cheered. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be fun. Ashido squealed. The air temperature dropped. Fun? Aizawa whispered. He looked at the students with a gaze that could freeze water. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be fun? You think natural disasters are fun? Villain attacks? He pushed his hair back from his face. All right. Let's make it interesting. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged as having no potential and will be expelled immediately. What? You can't do that! Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's unfair. Natural disasters are unfair, Aizawa countered. Villains are unfair. The world is unfair. It is a hero's job to overturn that unfairness. If you're here to play with your friends at the arcade, go home. He looked directly at Izuku. Go. The trials, the tests began. Izuku knew he was in trouble. Without the sword or the stored energy, his physical body was weaker than an average human. He was anemic and had low muscle density due to the parasite. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida ran it in 3.04 seconds. Izuku stepped up against Bakugo. I can't use the sword here, Izuku thought. It's too slow to draw. I have to use the partial manifestation. He focused on his legs. Black lightning. Reinforce the muscle fibers. Start. Bakugo blasted off with explosions. Izuku channeled the energy from his breakfast. Black sparks flew from his heels. He moved fast, much faster than a normal human, but he was clumsy. Bakugo crossed the line at 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed at 5.02 seconds. TCH, Bakugo scoffed. Slow, Deku, Izuku panted. He had burned a lot of calories just for that burst. He quickly ate a glucose tablet while Aizawa wasn't looking. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku grabbed the dynamometer. He channeled the black claw into his hand. The shadow wrapped around the device. Squeeze, the machine crunched. But more than that, the metal aged. The spring rusted and snapped. Error, the machine read. Whoa, Midoriya broke it! Kirishima yelled. Aizawa looked at the rusted metal. He marked something down on his clipboard. He didn't look impressed. He looked concerned. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku used a burst of wind pressure from a partial slash to clear the sandbox entirely. Good result. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Disaster. Izuku's stamina failed him. He got winded halfway through and slowed down. The beast didn't like repetitive, pointless motion. It wanted to hunt, not dance. The final trial, the ball throw. By the time they reached the ball throw, Izuku was exhausted. He was hovering in the middle of the pack. He knew Minato was likely last, but Izuku wasn't safe. Uraraka threw the ball. Infinity. The class cheered. Midoriya, Aizawa called. Izuku walked to the circle. His heart was hammering. This was it. If he used the full sword, he could easily clear a kilometer. But the sword was dangerous. It might slice the ball. It might slice the trees. It might try to eat Aizawa. But if I don't use it, I'm expelled. He picked up the ball. You can do it, Midoriya. Ida encouraged. Izuku took a breath. He planted his feet. Awaken, he commanded. The hum responded. Feed. Shadows swirled around Izuku's arm. The air turned cold. The other students shivered instinctively. Izuku wound up. He prepared to unleash a wave of black force to propel the ball. Smash! He threw his arm forward. Nothing happened. The ball plopped onto the grass a pitiful 46 meters away. The shadows had vanished instantly. Izuku stood there, confused. His arm felt dead. The connection to the beast was gone. It was silent inside him. What? He turned around. Aizawa was standing there. His hair was floating, defying gravity. His eyes were glowing a menacing red. His capture scarf was unraveling. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said flatly. Eraserhead. Izuku whispered. Aizawa walked toward him. He didn't look lazy anymore. He looked dangerous. The entrance exam was definitely not rational enough, Aizawa said. Even a kid with a weapon of mass destruction could pass if he just swung it around. He stopped right in front of Izuku. I saw what happened. You rely on that sword for everything. Your speed, your strength, your confidence. But tell me, Midoriya, when the sword takes over, who is in charge? Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around Izuku and pulling him close. Your quirk is parasitic. I can see it in your medical files. It eats energy. It eats you. And when you use it, it wants to eat everything else. I can control it. Izuku gasped, struggling against the scarf. Can you? Aizawa challenged. Or are you just holding the leash of a tiger that hasn't decided to bite you yet? If you lose control in a hostage situation, you won't just fail to save the hostage. You'll kill them. You'll kill the villain. You'll kill everyone. Aizawa's eyes bored into Izuku's soul. There is nothing sadder than a hero who tries to save people and ends up butchering them because his power was too great for his body. He released Izuku. The scarf retracted. Aizawa blinked, and his hair fell. I've returned your quirk. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku stood in the circle, trembling. The connection rushed back. The beast was angry. It had been silenced, and it didn't like it. It wanted to lash out. Kill him, the voice hissed. He is a threat. Drain him dry. No, Izuku whispered. He looked at the ball. Aizawa was right. He was relying on the sword's brute force. He was just opening the floodgates and hoping for the best. I need to focus. I don't need the whole sword. I don't even need the claw. He remembered the feeling of the 0-pointer. The focus. He didn't need to summon the weapon. He needed to summon the propulsion. Izuku picked up the ball. He's gonna get expelled, Bakugo muttered. He can't do anything without going berserk. Izuku closed his eyes. He visualized the cage. He didn't open the door. He opened the viewing slot. Give me power, Izuku demanded. But stay in the cage. The beast roared in protest, but yielded. Izuku channeled the energy. He didn't coat his whole arm. He focused every ounce of the black lightning into the tip of his index finger and his thumb. He wound up. He threw. As the ball left his hand, he snapped his fingers. Storm. Flick. A concentrated bullet of black pressure exploded from his finger. It hit the ball with the force of a cannon shot. Boom. The air cracked. A shockwave blasted the grass backward. The ball disappeared into the stratosphere, leaving a trail of black smoke. Izuku stood there. His finger was purple, bruised from the recoil of channeling that much density through a small point. But the sword hadn't manifested. The cold hadn't spread. He turned to Aizawa. He clenched his fist. I'm still standing, Izuku said, his voice shaking but defiant. And I didn't eat anyone. Aizawa looked at the device. 709.6 meters. A faint, almost invisible smile touched the corner of Aizawa's lips. Rational enough, Aizawa muttered. The results. The sun was setting. The students gathered around the digital scoreboard. 1. Yairo Zumomo. 2. Todoroki Shoto. 3. Bakugo Katsuki. 18. Midoriya Izuku. 20. Mineta Minoru. Izuku let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for hours. He wasn't last. He was safe. By the way, Aizawa said, turning to walk away. The expulsion was a logical ruse. It was to draw out your upper limits. Way out? The class screamed. I knew it! Yaoyorozu said with a sigh of relief. It was obvious. That was a little scary, sir. Uraraka said. Aizawa stopped. He looked back at them. Welcome to UA. Your curriculum sheets are in the classroom. Dismissed. He walked away. Izuku stared at the retreating back of his teacher. He knew the truth. Aizawa hadn't been lying. If Izuku had lost control, if he had drawn that sword and threatened the safety of the class, Aizawa would have expelled him without hesitation. The logical ruse was a lie to comfort the others. The threat had been real for Izuku. Hey, Deku! Izuku turned. Uraraka was running over to him. That last throw was amazing. Your finger looked like it hurt though. I'm okay, Izuku said, looking at his bruised digit. Recovery girl would have to fix it. You were really cool, Midoriya, Ida said, adjusting his glasses. As they walked back toward the changing rooms, Izuku felt a gaze burning into his back. He glanced over his shoulder. Bakugo was standing there. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't exploding. He was just watching Izuku with an expression of pure, calculating intensity. Izuku turned back around. He had passed the gate. He was inside the walls now. But as he walked into the shadow of the school building, the hum in his chest vibrated softly. The gatekeeper let us in, the beast whispered. Now the feast begins. Izuku gripped his uniform over his heart. Shut up, he whispered. We're heroes now. The rabbit does not hate the wolf. The rabbit fears the wolf. But if the rabbit could hold a knife, it would not hesitate to use it. The afternoon sun filtered through the high windows of Class 1A, casting long, geometric shadows across the desks. To most of the students, it was just sunlight. To Izuku Midoriya, it was a taunt. It was warmth he couldn't keep, energy he couldn't hold. He sat at his desk, nursing a pouch of high-glucose nutrient jelly. It tasted like copper and artificial strawberries. He sucked it down grimly, feeling the sludge hit his stomach and instantly vaporize into the black hole that was his cardiovascular system. Midoriya-chan, a voice whispered. Izuku flinched, nearly dropping the pouch. He looked up to see Tsuyu Azuri, the frog girl, standing beside his desk. Her large, inquisitive eyes were fixed on him. You're always eating, she noted bluntly. But you look like you're starving. Ribbit. Izuku managed a weak smile. Fast metabolism. It's part of the quirk tax. It's scary, she said, tilting her head. Yesterday, during the ball throw, the air got cold. It felt like a ghost walked over my grave. Izuku looked down at his hands. They were trembling slightly. I'm sorry. I tried to keep it contained. I didn't say it was bad, Azuri added, placing a finger on her chin. Just scary. Like a deep ocean trench. Before Izuku could respond, the door to the classroom burst open. It didn't slide. It was thrown open with enough force to rattle the frame. I am here. A massive figure in a Silver Age suit leaned into the room, striking a pose that defied anatomy. Coming through the door like a normal person, the class erupted. It's All Might! Kaminari shrieked. He's really teaching us. Look at that Silver Age costume. Ojiro marveled. It gives me goosebumps. All Might marched to the podium, his cape billowing in a wind that didn't exist. He looked vibrant, powerful, the very antithesis of Izuku. But as the hero's blue eyes swept the room, they lingered on Izuku for a fraction of a second. In that glance, Izuku saw the concern. All Might knew the monster was hungry today. Foundational Heroes Studies. All Might announced, his voice booming. For this class, we'll be building your hero foundation through various trials. Let's jump right in. He pulled a card from his pocket and held it up. Battle trial, battle. Bakugo's voice rasped from the front row. It wasn't excitement. It was the low growl of a dog seeing an intruder. And to go with that, All Might pointed to the wall, which began to slide open to reveal numbered suitcases. You need these. Costumes made based on your quirk registrations and requests you sent in before school started. Awesome! The class cheered in unison. Get changed and meet me at ground beta. All Might commanded. Remember, from today on, you are heroes. The locker room. The boys' locker room was filled with the sound of zippers and excited chatter. Man, I hope my costume looks cool, Kirishima said, showing off his jagged teeth. I went for a manly aesthetic. I went for functionality, Ida said, carefully polishing a piece of engine armor. Izuku stood in the corner, facing his open locker. He stared at case 18. He had spent weeks designing this. Or rather, designing around it. He opened the case. The fabric was dark green, almost black. It was a heavy, reinforced material, lead-lined Kevlar weave. The purpose wasn't just protection from enemies. It was insulation. It was designed to dampen the necrotic aura he leaked when he got stressed. He pulled on the bodysuit. It was tight, compressing his muscles, helping blood flow. Over the chest, right above his heart, was a metal plate engraved with a stylized storm cloud. He pulled on the gauntlets. They were bulky, fitted with ports that allowed him to inject nutrient stims directly into his bloodstream if he bottomed out. Finally, he clipped the scabbard to his back. It was empty, of course. The sword wasn't physical until he made it so. But having the scabbard, there was a psychological anchor, a place for the weapon to belong, so it didn't feel like it belonged in his flesh. He looked in the mirror. He looked like a wraith. The dark hood pulled up over his messy hair, the metal mouthguard he wore to filter the air, and hide his teeth when they got too sharp. Whoa, Midoriya, Mineta squeaked from behind him. You look intense. Like a grim reaper. Yeah, Izuku whispered, adjusting his gloves. Something like that. Ground beta. The class gathered in the mock city. It was a bright, clear day, which only made Izuku's dark attire stand out more. You all look cool. All Might shouted, giving a thumbs up. Now, shall we begin? Uraraka jogged over to Izuku. She looked like a pink astronaut, bubbly and round. Deku! Look at you! She marveled. You look so cool. But isn't that heavy? It's weighted, Izuku admitted. To keep me grounded. Grounded? Like mentally? Physically, Izuku lied. I need the resistance training. All Might explained the rules. Villains guard a nuclear weapon. Heroes infiltrate. Capture the villain or touch the nuke. He held up the lottery box. First up, he pulled 2 balls. Team A are the heroes. Team D are the villains. Izuku felt his stomach drop. Team A, Midoriya Izuku and Uraraka Ochako. Team D, Bakugo Katsuki and Ida Tenya. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Across the crowd, Bakugo turned. He was wearing his massive grenade gauntlets. His mask flared out in black spikes. His red eyes locked onto Izuku's. There was no shouting. No Deku. No explosions. Just a silence so loud it drowned out the city noise. Bakugo smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a baring of teeth. Everyone else, head to the monitoring room. All Might ordered. Villains, you have 5 minutes to set up. Heroes, wait at the entrance. The setup. Inside the building, on the 5th floor. Ida was pacing around the papier-mâché bomb. This is a serious responsibility. We must adopt the mindset of true villains. I shall secure the perimeter. He began clearing the room of loose objects. Bakugo stood by the door, staring at the floor. Bakugo-kun? Ida asked. Are you listening? We need a strategy. Strategy? Bakugo scoffed. His voice was low, vibrating with suppressed rage. I don't need a strategy for a pebble. Midoriya is not a pebble, Ida said, chopping his hand. He placed first in the entrance exam. His power destroyed the 0-pointer. We cannot underestimate him. Bakugo turned. You don't get it, Four Eyes. That thing he has, it's not a quirk. It's a curse. Bakugo looked at his hands. He remembered the sludge villain. He remembered the feeling of the air turning into a vacuum. He remembered feeling like meat. He thinks he's better than me because he found a magic sword, Bakugo hissed. He thinks he can look down on me? I'm going to show him. I'm going to show him that even with his monster, he's still just Deku. Bakugo-kun, you are violating the spirit of the exercise. Shut up, Bakugo said, walking out of the room. Just guard the rock. I'm going hunting. The infiltration. Outside, Izuku was hyperventilating. Whoa, Deku, breathe. Uraraka patted his back. You're shaking. It's Kakin, Izuku wheezed. He's going to come for me. He won't care about the bomb. He won't care about the time limit. He wants to kill me. Kill you? Uraraka looked horrified. But it's a class. You don't understand, Izuku said, clutching the storm cloud plate on his chest. Since the sludge incident, he looks at me differently. He used to look at me like I was a bug. Now he looks at me like I'm a threat to his existence. The buzzer sounded. Start. Izuku took a deep breath. He visualized the cage. Stay inside, he told the beast. Just give me the speed. No sword. No hunger. Uraraka-san, Izuku said, his voice steadying. We split up. Kakin will come for me immediately. While he's distracted, you find the bomb. Are you sure? Can you take him alone? I have to, Izuku said grimly. If I don't, he'll hunt us both down. They entered the building. The hallways were dark concrete. Izuku stepped lightly, his weighted boots making no sound thanks to a thin layer of shadow he applied to the soles. They reached the second floor. The sensation in Izuku's chest spiked. It wasn't hunger. It was a warning. Get down! Izuku shouted. He tackled Uraraka just as the wall beside them exploded. Boom! Debris and smoke filled the corridor. A massive figure emerged from the dust, smoke curling from a gauntlet hand. Found you, Bakugo growled. He didn't wait. He launched himself through the smoke, his right hand winding back for a swing. Izuku shoved Uraraka away. Go! He rolled forward, under Bakugo's swing. Don't run, you coward! Bakugo roared, turning midair with a blast to correct his trajectory. He landed and spun, aiming a kick at Izuku's head. Izuku blocked. He channeled a burst of energy into his forearms, black skin, hardening the tissue for a split second. Thud. The kick connected. Izuku slid back 5 feet, his boots screeching on the concrete. His arm throbbed. Even with the reinforcement, Bakugo hit like a truck. Uraraka, go now! Izuku screamed. Uraraka scrambled up and ran toward the stairs. Bakugo ignored her completely. His eyes were locked on Izuku. You're not using it, Bakugo said, walking forward. Sparks danced in his palms. Where is it? Where's your stick? I don't need it to beat you, Izuku said, settling into a fighting stance All Might had taught him. Don't need it? Bakugo stopped. His shoulders shook. You think you can beat me with your bare hands? You, who couldn't even kick a ball a month ago. Bakugo exploded forward. Don't mock me. The fight began in earnest. Bakugo was relentless. He was a prodigy of combat. Every movement flowed into the next. Right hook, explosion, feint, left hook, explosion behind him for speed, knee to the gut. Izuku was on the defensive. He was faster than Bakugo thanks to the passive buff of his quirk, but he lacked the instinct. He was reacting, not acting. Duck. Weave. Block. He coated his arms in shadow to parry the explosions, the black energy absorbing the heat and force. Delicious, the beast whispered. Spicy. Shut up, Izuku gritted out. Stop talking to yourself. Bakugo yelled. He unleashed a barrage of small, rapid-fire explosions. Izuku was overwhelmed. The smoke blinded him. A fist connected with his cheek, snapping his head back. Another hit his ribs. Izuku stumbled. Is that it? Bakugo screamed, grabbing Izuku's arm and blasting him into the wall. Crack. The concrete wall spiderwebbed behind Izuku. He slumped, gasping for air. His mask was cracked. A trickle of blood ran down his chin. You're nothing, Bakugo panted, standing over him. you're just a vessel for a parasite. Without that freak power, you're just a pebble in my path. Izuku looked up. His vision was swimming, the pain was sharp. And with pain, came the need for relief. With the need for relief, came the hunger. The cage in his mind rattled. The lock grew hot. Kaken, Izuku wheezed. You're amazing. Bakugo froze. But Izuku continued, his eyes flashing with a faint green luminescence. You're afraid. What? Bakugo stepped back. You're attacking me, because you're terrified. Izuku stood up slowly. The shadows in the hallway seemed to lengthen, crawling toward his feet. You know what I am, and you hate that I'm above you on the food chain. Shut up. Bakugo raised his right gauntlet. He reached for the pin. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice crackled over the speakers. Are you trying to kill him? You cannot use a stored charge indoors. If he doesn't dodge, he dies. Bakugo yelled, his sanity fraying at the edges. He won't die. He's a monster. He pulled the pin. Click. The world went white. A massive blast of nitroglycerin-fueled fire erupted from the gauntlet. It filled the hallway, incinerating the floor tiles, shattering the windows. It was an inferno meant to annihilate. Izuku watched the fire coming. It was beautiful. It was pure energy. The cage door didn't just open. It melted. Stormbringer. Izuku didn't scream it. The word was spoken by the universe itself around him. He thrust his right hand forward. He didn't draw the sword from his chest. He became the sword. The black energy erupted from his palm, forming a massive, swirling vortex of darkness. Drink. The fireball hit the vortex. Physics broke. Instead of burning Izuku, the fire was sucked into the darkness. The orange flames turned blue, then violet, then black. The heat vanished instantly, replaced by a flash-freezing chill that cracked the concrete walls. Bakugo watched, eyes wide, as his ultimate move was eaten. The smoke cleared. Izuku was standing there. But he had changed. The right side of his costume had shredded away. His arm was entirely encased in black, chitinous armor formed from solidified shadow. In his hand he held the black blade. It was humming so loudly the windows on the other buildings were vibrating. Izuku's skin was gray. His eyes were pitch black pools with glowing green irises. He breathed out, and visible frost formed in the air. Thanks for the meal, Izuku said. His voice was distorted, layered with the growl of the beast. Bakugo stepped back. For the first time in his life, his legs were shaking. You! Bakugo whispered. My turn, Izuku grinned. He moved. He didn't run. He simply ceased to be at point A and appeared at point B. He was inside Bakugo's guard instantly. Bakugo reacted on instinct, throwing a right hook. Izuku caught the fist with his free hand. Crunch. He didn't break the bone. He drained the muscle. Bakugo screamed as his arm went numb. The explosive sweat on his palm evaporated instantly. Izuku spun the sword. He brought the flat of the blade down toward Bakugo's other shoulder. Submit. The blade hit Bakugo. It didn't cut flesh. It cut stamina. Bakugo fell to his knees, his vision going black. He felt like he had just run a marathon in 10 seconds. He gasped, trying to summon an explosion, but only a pathetic puff of smoke came out. Izuku stood over him, the sword raised for a finishing blow. The blade was pulsing, screaming for more. Take the rest, the beast urged. He is a sun. Eat the sun. No, Izuku muttered, his face twitching. He tried to kill us. End the threat. Eat his heart. No! Izuku shouted. He grabbed his sword arm with his left hand. The blade was inches from Bakugo's neck. The energy radiating from it was aging Bakugo's skin. Wrinkles appeared around his eyes, his hair turning slightly brittle. Deku. Bakugo wheezed, looking up at the nightmare. Run! Izuku gasped, tears of black ichor leaking from his eyes. Run away, Kaken! In the monitoring room, the class was silent. He's going to kill him! Kirishima yelled. All Might, stop it! All Might was already reaching for the microphone button, his hand crushing the console. Midoriya! Stand down! The match is over if you kill him, Izuku heard the voice. It was distant, like hearing someone underwater. He fought for control. The beast was strong today. It had tasted the explosion. It wanted the source. Uraraka! Izuku screamed into his comms. Do it now! Upstairs, Uraraka heard the desperation in his voice. She had been hesitating, listening to the chaos below. Right. She squeaked. She touched herself, making her body weightless. She grabbed a pillar. Comet home run! She swung the pillar, hitting debris at Ida. What? Ida turned. Uraraka launched herself over him, hugging the bomb. Captured! She yelled. Hero team wins! All Might's voice boomed. The words echoed in the hallway. Izuku froze. Win. Hunt over. The logic penetrated the beast's haze. The purpose of the violence was achieved. Izuku let out a guttural roar of effort. He wrenched his arm back. The sword dissipated into black mist. Izuku collapsed. The armor on his arm crumbled away like ash. He fell forward, landing face first on the cold concrete, right next to the kneeling, terrified Bakugo. The hallway was silent, save for the heavy breathing of two boys who had just stared into the abyss. The aftermath. The infirmary was quiet. Izuku lay in a bed, hooked up to 3-4 bags containing high glucose solution. He was pale, his body temperature barely registering on the thermometer. The curtain pulled back. All Might entered, not in his muscle form, but in his true, skeletal state. You gave us quite a scare, young Midoriya, All Might said softly. Izuku opened his eyes. They were green again, the black scare gone. Did I hurt him? Izuku asked immediately. Young Bakugo is fine, All Might assured him. Exhausted. Mild hypothermia. Some temporary cellular aging in his shoulder, but Recovery Girl fixed it. He will be sore for a few days, but he is intact. Izuku let out a shaky breath. I almost didn't stop. The fire. It was so much energy. The sword got drunk on it. You absorbed a blast that could have leveled the building, All Might said, sitting down. And you contained it. That is progress. It didn't feel like progress, Izuku whispered. It felt like I was the villain. Did you see his face? Kaken wasn't angry at the end. He was horrified. Fear is a natural reaction to the unknown, All Might said. Bakugo has a lot of growing to do. Today, his ego took a heavy blow. He realized he is not the only strong one in the world, All Might sighed, but we must address the class. They are unsettled. The classroom review. Back in 1A, the atmosphere was heavy. Izuku walked in, his arm in a sling, muscle strain. The chatter stopped instantly. Everyone looked at him. Not with the awe they gave Todoroki, or the respect they gave Ida. They looked at him with apprehension. Midoriya! Only one person broke the silence. Uraraka ran up to him. Are you okay? They took you away on a stretcher. I'm fine, Izuku mumbled, avoiding eye contact with the room. Just sugar crash. That was crazy, man, Kirishima said, walking over cautiously. You ate that explosion like it was nothing. Is your stomach okay? It's not his stomach, Azui said. It's the sword. She pointed at his chest. You turn into a different person when that thing comes out. It's a combat trance, Ida interjected, though he looked pale. A necessary mindset for handling high-risk quirks. No, a cold voice said from the back. Todoroki Shoto was looking at Izuku. His heterochromatic eyes were piercing.